Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. This is the Merced Subbasin Gsa Technical Advisory Committee meeting. In the room here, we've got 5 committee members. We are one short of a quorum, so when we get that 6th person, we can take any actions, especially on the minutes that we need to take. But in the meantime, we'll just have discussion and go through the agenda as is. Let's start with a round of introductions. And we have our phone. Okay.
Perfect.
My name is Mr. Quorum.
Yeah.
Hello, George Quorum Hart.
Might want to grab your handouts there, George.
If you want to sit over here too, maybe.
I didn't. Yeah, so you can see the TV.
Grab the mic.
For those of you online, we've got a handout in the room, and it is on the Merced Subbasin Gsa's website under the Technical Advisory Committee tab. So today's meeting is called Meeting Materials, and that's the handout that the committee members are going to be kind of looking at here in the room. So for introductions, I'm Lacey McBride with Merced County and the Merced Subbasin Gsa.
Yeah, Brad Samuelson, representing Sandy Mushroom Water Company.
George Park, Country Mutual Water Company.
Blake Nervino, grower in Stevenson.
Mike Brazil, farmer in Stevenson.
Bob Kelly, Stevenson Water District.
Jimmy Outwell, Merced Grower, and the Grid.
Great, and if you can go online, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Greg Young with San Hero, consultant to the county, to the GSA.
Alexis Rudich, Merced County Farm Bureau.
Lou Myers, grower on the east side.
Jeannie Zalezzi, General Counsel for the MSGSA.
Susan Xie with EKI.
Kevin Bursey, an attorney representing landowners in the subbasin.
Pedro Ramirez, Wood San Hero, consultant to the GSA.
Great, thank you. I think that's everybody. And now we do have a quorum in the room of 6 members, so we'll keep going down our agenda. The next item is the public comment period, and which is the public opportunity to speak on any matter of public interest within the jurisdiction of the GSA, including items on the agenda. And so is there anybody who'd like to make public comment? None. We'll move on to the next item, which is the minutes. So we have 2 sets of minutes for the committee members. They were emailed out with the agenda packet June 5th, 2024 and November 26th, 2024. Are there any comments, edits, changes to the minutes? Or would you like to take action to approve those? No, no changes. Does somebody want to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion. We approve them. I didn't really go over them, to be honest.
Nobody went over them. Do you want to hold the minutes until next meeting?
We
to
could
give you
hold
more
them.
time to review them.
Yeah, I guess so.
I know I wasn't present for at least the first of those 2 meetings. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
the second one, so.
If you want a little bit more time, you can table the minutes and bring them back to you at the next meeting. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's table them.
You will see 3 sets of minutes at your February meeting.
We'll be ready.
And you will be ready. Great. Okay, so the next item number 4 is the allocation rule concepts. And so I think we've got, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got 2 pretty significant items. One is the handout in the room and online, and that is going over the draft monitoring of consumption. And then I think we're also going to have some discussion on effective precipitation today.
Correct.
Greg, I am going to hand it over to you. I know the committee members haven't had a lot of time to review this document, so maybe if you could walk everybody through it, that would be a great start, and then we can take the discussion as it goes from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what you have in front of you, whether you're looking on that paper in front of you or online, is section 1.8, and it's an expansion of 1.8, specifically starting at 1.8.2. So the first part here was exactly the language that was adopted earlier, or I guess late last year, and where we had said we were going to be expanding on some of this by April. So if we scroll through 1.8.1, we get down to 1.8.2, which is on the second page, tracking of consumption, and this says material below is all new. And so what this now goes through is several different aspects of the monitoring of consumption. The first part is to allow, to try and simplify some of the challenges we've faced in the past with whether a parcel is being irrigated or not, would be to allow a user to select at the beginning of each year whether a particular parcel was going to be irrigated and included in the groundwater accounting framework for that coming year or not. It also has a provision that if you said no, but partly through, let's say we have a really rainy April and into May, and you decide you do want to irrigate and maybe put on a late season crop or something, it allows you to bring that parcel back in to play if those situations exist. So that's what the first part of 1.8.2.1 is addressing. Are there any questions with that representation?
Yeah, question would be, why do you have two different dates in the first two paragraphs? You have January 15th to designate a parcel as inactive, and then you have to submit the form by January 31st. What is the point of having the January 15th date if it's gonna have to have a form submitted by the 31st? It seems like it'd be simpler to just have one date there.
That's a good comment. We will look to, I'm looking at it again here to see if there was a reasoning. I think part of this intentionally is to use your groundwater accounting platform itself, where you can just check and select a parcel and then separately give you a little bit of time to submit something else that's signing an attestation. But if we can combine that, I think that does make sense, George.
Well, are you able to designate a portion of a parcel as irrigated and non-irrigated?
No, because the way the groundwater accounting works and the monitoring part, it is not specific to a field per se.
That's fine.
Because your allocation, again, is based on a gross parcel acres. And so you're either irrigating part or some of that part, all or part of that parcel anyway. And the only thing we're going to actually measure consumption is the part that is partially irrigated. This is really a way to turn off, if you recall from some of the land repurposing, there were challenges with whether effective precip was accommodating appropriately. And while we have that as a second topic, we wanted to make it a little more simplified to just say, look, I'm not irrigating that field. That field's fallow this year. So don't even worry about whether it's included in any consumptive use. And you know, you take off effective precip and it still looks like there's a use as part of it. We're just eliminating that part of the confusion.
Yeah, I get that, but you said field right then, but it's not field, it's parcel.
It's on a parcel, right? So if you're irrigating part of the parcel, you have a field in there, you're gonna need to keep the whole thing in. All right, so,
A little bigger too.
sorry, what's that?
Can you just can Adriel just make the screen a little bit bigger just for the words? Thank you.
Oh, is that Adriel sharing? Sorry. So moving on into 1822, the standard method for calculating consumptive use. So essentially, just as a quick refresher, under 1.8.1, which we skimmed through quickly, that is saying you have a certain amount of water in your bucket, and you're going to be the consumptive use of that, what's in your account, your allocation management account, is going to be subtracted out of your buckets based on the consumption that's determined for that parcel. So now the question is, how are we determining consumptive use for that management account? And so the first part is we are going to use the groundwater accounting framework, or groundwater accounting platform, and which currently uses OpenET. So that's the default. And you notice that it says in this opening paragraph, be calculated at the annual value of ET as determined by OpenET minus effective precip as defined in 1.8.3. And that we'll discuss effective precip in a minute. So please hold any questions on that part. And then we skip and we say, okay, alternatives could be, alternative method 1 is you may have a different remote sensing mechanism. And you have to just submit that information to us, and we will consider that. So some people might be contracting with somebody like Land IQ to do their all their farms. And so we could accept that in, and the groundwater accounting platform has the capability to accept other data sources. So we're leaving that, we're trying to create that option for growers to choose a different alternative. So the default is OpenET, but you can say, hey, I have a contract with another recognized remote sensing data source, and I can bring that forward. Then method 2 is to use flow meters. And so if you choose to use a flow meter, we now say, okay, you have to let us know you're going to use a flow meter. And then every following month, you have to give us the data associated with that flow meter. And that flow meter has to meet certain standards, which is, getting more and more typical in the conversations around the valley about trying to have calibrated meters that are essentially volumetrically field checked every so often, so we know that they're within certain errors of margin or margins of error, whichever way we want to say that. So this is getting into the alternative of using a flow meter. What we now say is if you are going to use a flow meter, that we are going to calculate, you see this under the first paragraph of alternative method 2, use is calculated as the annual value of extracted groundwater multiplied by the reported irrigation efficiency of the irrigation method used in the parties. We don't have that, in the parties parcels. We don't have that laid out yet, but the thought would be if I'm running trees and I happen to have micro sprayers and maybe there's a default number of 85% efficiency or something else, or maybe there's some report that can be provided. If you pumped 100 units, then your consumption is going to associate with the efficiency. So we're basically not dinging you for deep percolation or possible runoff. And so we're going to look at what that efficiency number is and say that's the part that's contributing to the ET and would be determined to be your consumption. Does that make sense? And are there any questions in either of these 3 methods for quantifying what would be on a typical irrigation parcel open to the atmosphere, I guess, versus a greenhouse?
Greg, my comment would be on the alternative method 2, which you just described, that percent efficiency. That can get really complicated really quickly. That was the hardest class I ever had to go through in college. So good luck with that. I think you're on the right track. I think that's the way to go to give that, but that can be really complicated.
And fully agree with that, Blake. I think what we're going to want to do is keep it simple by saying you get this default number based on what your irrigation type is. I flood, I drip, I micro, I sublateral, whatever it is, and here's a number. And if you feel like your number should be greater than that, or something different, then we may need to ask for documentation.
Yeah,
From-
put the burden of proof on the grower.
Yeah,
I like that. In my
irrigation
class,
plan.
we were able to look up the government soil maps, for example, and that gave you a certain percentage. And then from there, you were able to do it and get decent numbers, fairly easily calculable. But to
Right.
get down to the nitty gritty, put the burden of proof on the grower at that point.
Yeah. And in reality, it all, distribution uniformity matters, soils matter, all these things matter, but we're trying to find that line between simplicity and offering an opportunity to use a meter because people may not want the remote sensing. And so if you give us a meter and your meter reads add up for the year to, 1,000 units, we could either deduct a full 1,000, but that's probably going to be more than you actually consumed. And so that's an adverse condition for you. So we're going to try and come up with something that's reasonably representative of what likely was getting consumed of the water you were applying.
Yeah, because that's where you get down to having to use leaf bombs and stuff to try and measure that.
Yeah, we don't want to get into too much. So there might just be, if you use this kind of method, you're at 75, this is 85, this is 9, or it's 3 or 4 brackets maybe, or numbers.
Yeah, most flood irrigation, for example, on sandy soil, you're lucky to get above 50 to 60% efficiency.
You're absolutely right. Unless you're doing, surge and shorter runs, and it's like all these things matter. So that's why we're trying to give the flexibility, but also be reasonable on the level of effort.
It's related, a couple of questions in the alternative method for flow meters. Your allocation management account that goes for a particular entity, when you're talking about the groundwater accounting platform, most growers are gonna loop all of their fields as one allocation management account, just so
Correct.
they can transfer over unused sustainable yield. Will you allow for both alternative methods in the allocation management account, or you're either going to have one or the other? Say you got
Well,
saved a lot of land here.
Yeah. That's a good question, Bob. If for, let's say you have, just making up numbers, 20 different parcels, you feel really good about this meter over here that's serving 5 or 6 of those, but they're all 20 parcels are in one account. You want to use the meter for those 5 or 6, and then use remote sensing for the remainder of the parcels. I think we can accommodate that. And it would have to be a combination. So it's a good input. Adriel and I can maybe put our heads together a little bit and see if we can create a hybrid.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're dealing with, say you've got half your parcels are flood irrigated and half your parcels are drip or micro mister. It's a little easier to use a flow meter for drip or micro mister because you have a meter right there at the pump. But with flood irrigation, you don't have that. There's low efficiencies and also a lot of losses between the source of the water and the application of the land.
But you still have a meter at the pump, was that right?
Yeah.
So it might be different parcels or different percentage applications for different parcels in some way. So understand the point. We're trying to, again, find that balance between over administrative burden and not creating a demand, a consumption against you that is not representative of reality.
Yeah, I mean, both ways, the operator and the GSA are gonna have to think about.
Yeah, and the GSA is going to default back to remote sensing, so we're going to use that as a checkpoint. So if you're like, hey, my meter said it was only 100 and the remote sensing says 1,000, we might ask some questions. So then, moving on, we go to non-field production areas and uses. So what we're representing here, and this may not be the right nomenclature because we do have, well, I think it still is non-field. We're trying to get to AFOs, so animal feeding operations, commercial and industrial processing facilities, greenhouses, managed wetlands, and then the potential of transport of pumped groundwater. All of these are uses that you that associate with a field that remote sensing may not work for. Right? A greenhouse, perfect example. You can't see inside a greenhouse to get any measurement. Animal feed operation, that portion, that footprint of the poultry barn or the dairy operation, we are saying that there will be you're going to have a couple of different methods for these different sources. So if we scroll down, option 1 for the AFO, which only applies to the animal feed operations, is you use a default number that we've developed probably with that industry, like the dairy number that's been out there from Four Creeks, that's been represented and is getting some use. We can say, here's your default number, or you can use a meter. And if you use a meter, we're going to bill 100%. There's no discounting for efficiency. We're presuming everything is going to consumption. And so we're trying to set up 2 different options for all these things that would not actually work for under remote sensing. And so that's what these other field uses are in these 2 different options. So option 1 is use of a standardized value, or option 2 is use the groundwater extraction data from a flow meter. And in that case, we're not going to adjust for some efficiency like we would out in an open field situation.
I think that makes sense on a greenhouse.
I think all of them it does.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
thought that was good.
yeah, because a greenhouse is gonna be 100% efficient because there's no way for the water to evaporate.
Same with transport.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it seems,
I was just reading this thing and I may have missed some of the last, but let me ask this question first. When you talk about the footprint of the animal feed operation in the dairy, for instance, are we going beyond just the dairy parlors, corrals, and everything? Are we taking in the entire assessed parcel? How is that? What is the thought on exactly?
great question, Bob. The thought is, let's say we have and every one is configured a little differently, but let's say we have a 500-acre parcel that 50 acres is kind of the dairy operation. It's the silage pits, it's the pond, it's the milking parlor, it's the pads, it's the shop, all that. We're going to need to actually, with that grower, mark that, and the groundwater accounting platform is ready for this. Mark out that 50 acres. The rest of it is all cropland. Your allocation is based on the entire 500 acres. The remote sensing would be used to calculate the consumption off of all the cropland, and then we'd use that 50-acre footprint to multiply by this either a number or a well that's designated just for that part of the land.
Sorry, let me interject. Greg, you said the accounting platform is already set up for that. Could you elaborate a little bit? And that's for kind of a different reason that I'm thinking of.
They know this is coming. We haven't actually built a thing where you as a grower can go in and plot it, but that capability for them to see that as a separate carve out field essentially, or parcel that can have a different value and not be part of a remote sensing calculation is intended to be functional.
Okay, so ostensibly a geofence, right? The landowner will come in and geofence that boundary, or will the GSA, or who knows exactly the mechanics of it, but it'll ostensibly work as a geofence.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, was that number a 6 inches?
Yes, for the dairy, it was 6 inches. conversations we've had with poultry, it depends on what they're growing. If it's just raising the small chicks or whether it's raising layers or what it is, there's different numbers that the poultry guys like Foster Farms has talked to us about, a couple different numbers. And so we might create those designations for those types of operations. And then maybe if you're running a feedlot type operation, there's a different number than the dairy. So we do have a couple of we have only the dairy number right now. We will need to develop those other ones.
Hey, Greg?
Yeah.
If the dairy chose the meter option, and then could you also meter the discharge to the field and subtract that number?
Yeah,
That's a good question.
You would have to, because you're reusing the water.
Yeah.
You'd have to get a credit for that, because these,
Yeah, but the thing is though, Mike, that water, pretend that pump is actually partly going to the dairy one day and then the next day it goes right to the field. That we're already measuring the consumption from the field on remote sensing. And so we gotta make sure we're not creating a situation that you can, hide some water, not intentionally, but accidentally. Or get double counted because of something.
I think the standard method is the way to go.
yes. I think everybody's gonna jump on that one, and it's simple.
It's simple. Fort Creek's did a lot of work on it.
Yep,
It's been scrutinized.
why not?
So I lost all volume. I don't know if you guys,
We're mumbling.
okay,
We're talking amongst ourselves.
that's fine. I just want to make sure it wasn't something we should all be listening to.
We don't want you to hear about it.
Mumble away.
You can keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
I'm bringing up one thing from an operational point of view. And, meters fail, and they've also completely lost all the information on them. That's problematic because, you need to tell the growers if they're using their meters, they gotta really watch them closely. And if they look like they're starting to fail and the needle's bouncing all over the place and that they figure out how to maintain them so they don't lose that information.
I mean, that's the beauty of the remote sensing is that it's
Yes.
affect any kind of meter haywireness. You just eliminate it. Sorry, your method's not.
Yeah, I think you should, Greg, I think there should be some verbiage put in there that if your system fails, it defaults back to the remote sensing.
Look at the top of page 4 under 18239.
Oh, okay.
And so what we're trying to say is every month you have to give us data. And if that, is you miss a month, we're going to default. The other thing that if you look at the bottom of page 3, where we say you need to follow the flow meter in accordance with 1.8.6, you don't see that part yet, but that essentially is you need to demonstrate some sort of, you need somebody to sign off that it is installed correctly and is within tolerance of the meter's specs as far as operating. And that's where there's guys who will run a quick, I don't know, 100-gallon flow test or something, and they'll pump that into a bucket or somewhere, and they'll measure and they'll double check that. And those can be just field operations once every 3-4 years or something.
What do you think of doing kind of like PG&E does on their meters? You put a tag on there so that if it gets tampered with, because it wouldn't be hard to have a duplicate section sitting around and unbolt your meter and bolt in something else, and
They'll cache them though with consumptive use. I mean, you can get away with a little bit, but.
yeah.
Well, people would never do that, Blake.
Yeah.
They wouldn't put fishing line in to try and slow down the impeller.
You remember that, huh? Yeah. I've been told about it.
So Brad, you're right that the GSA is always going to do an overlook with remote sensing. You know, if they're close enough, it's not going to be an issue, but if seems to be some discrepancy, there's going to have to be a little bit of an investigation and understanding what was going on.
Yeah.
And it could be the remote sensing is wrong too. You know, it's not like we're just trying to find ways to work again within this allocation.
Right.
So if we keep scrolling down through the options, essentially you have those two options. You have a predetermined number or you use the meter and it's the full number of the meter. So that's really what is in this portion of the monitoring. There is separate, I'm scrolling all the way back up to, where is it here? The alternative sources, I guess that comes later. It's not in this part. For Bob's, oh, it's down under 1841. So page 6, top of page 6. Bob, this section, because I know you are asking about it, it has been drafted. It is working within the ad hoc. This is when we start talking about, okay, I'm not using groundwater, I'm using alternative sources, either stored surface water or a water supply through a contractor or right. So that's being developed. So that will come in here also as, you know, here's your consumption. Your consumption is going to be subtracted out of your bucket of your sustainable yield of native groundwater and your additional pumping, unless there's another source of water that you're designating as that source. And that's where this other part comes in and how that's going to be determined and tracked.
Hey Greg, is there gonna be a way for the Merced irrigation district, out of district water to be pushed through the platform from MID into our GSA account?
It may have to come to the GSA first, like through you. It's functionality they're working on. I was on a meeting the other day, quarterly development meeting, and they're working on functionality where you can enter information of like, here's what I got delivered in each of these months, and then submit maybe a PDF of the actual bill. But that may not be ready to go, and we might need to just have you submit that data, and then that just gets entered and uploaded into the accounting platform. Does that answer your question, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully one day it could go where MID is able to actually push it. I know that's how it's done in East Tooley, the irrigation districts push their surface water numbers into the GSA portal.
Yeah.
That built water, but we got enough, I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully one day.
The challenge with that is we're going to have to know what accounts it actually gets pushed to. So all that interaction. And then if you're leasing account or lands and stuff like that, there's constant need to feed data between the parties. It's all doable. It's all technically doable. It's just getting there. Okay, so I think if there's no other questions on how we're looking at doing this monitoring, we can talk about effective precip because that's the other important component. So
One quick question then, Greg, before we move on. Reading through 1.8.4.1 and 2 real quickly, I'm not seeing anything talk about people who have come to the board and expressed the fact that they've already put significant resources and money into recharging. The board would essentially look into those claims and figure out what to do with that. Is now a good time to bring that up or go through any of that?
As a TAC, you can provide input on that. I know it's a topic that has come up. Ad hoc is discussing that. There's pros and cons in various ways. So if you guys want to, as a TAC, make any kind of formal recommendation. Otherwise, it's as an individual to make it a future public comment portion of the board.
It seems like 1.8.4.1 or 4.2 might be a good place for us to kind of bring that up and come up with an opinion. I know that a lot of it seems like it's been the opinion of the GSA that they don't want to penalize anybody for trying to be preemptive and do things ahead of time. We want to, reward good behavior essentially. So, I think that it would be a good idea as a TAC committee that we recommend the board gives consideration to those people. And then we also should try
You're
to,
talking about, just to make sure I'm clear.
yeah,
Retroactive flood mar and recharge basically from 2023. Did they give us the farmers retro credit?
I think that's kind of what these people in the
There's
meetings
lots of
were,
people, because I remember there was never a promise, but there was definitely.
yeah,
They would work on it.
yes, that's exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's-
And then it was also stated that it might not be, it's gonna be a percentage thereof.
Well,
They're not
always
gonna
leave
get
behind.
there's gonna be a leave behind. So I think,
Well, that's my question is, we don't have the details to the recharge or seepage as to leave behind and credit, how the credit's established. We don't,
Right.
those details are yet to be determined, and when would they be
That's
expected?
supposed to come in here,
In that section.
in that section, right?
So-
What
Yeah,
Blake's saying is that address those things, plus 2023 winter, when people spent money renting pumps and, flexible pipelines and things like that. Because there was inclination from the board to get people out, get this water on the ground, so.
Yeah.
I think that.
yeah,
Is that summing up?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm getting at. 'Cause
It's
people-
also
money.
relatedly come up with those who bought or got MID water and paid money for that MID water, not just the ones who were using the EO opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's a discussion. The board is, the ad hoc members have recognized that as a discussion point.
Greg, what about the guys that want to start leaving ground fallow this year? Could we give them some credit? Since we're paying people not to farm, but the guy that's doing volunteer fallow this year, can we give him credit for put water in his bucket for the following years?
So this is, Mike, I'm glad you brought that up, and I swear I did not pay you to bring that up. But this is the exact point of the slippery slope question. Okay, well, what if I followed last year? Do I get free credit in my account for last year? What if I follow this year? What if so there's all these things that all of them are on the table. It's just now a question of, do we end up in a position of, do we create any issues that create liability for the GSA?
Right, but I mean, in good faith, if you want to start fallowing ground to save water, because if you don't incentivize anything, nobody's gonna cut back anything this year. I'm gonna farm wall to wall. Because if I'm not gonna get credit for nothing, might as well get as much as I can while I can.
So it's an interesting question. So what if you had trees? Would you rip your trees out this year if we were going to give you credit versus just growing them for another year and getting the crop off of it? Depends.
I consider taking them out, just save the water for maybe the replants.
Probably depends on where the commodity prices are, right? And so, I mean, there's like all sorts of things that it gets complicated. It can get done. It just gets complicated about whose account gets what. How do we do it? Is there how does that extra credit essentially diminish? Is it a separate bucket that goes away faster? Like you got to use it. It can't carry forward like a 2023 recharge. Can you still use that in 2027 if 26 is, our first year of actual running this is a good wet year? I don't know. There's all these questions of how long it stays. Some of that is.
Yeah, I think your answer would be yes, because the GSA could just simply prioritize, use up that bucket first. And then your other additional APA bucket that would start in 2026 would carry over. So fine, if you want to put a 1 year, use it or lose it thing on it, great, but it just means your other buckets stay fuller.
It may be hard, but it can be done to get this,
Yeah.
so that everybody's
Yeah.
satisfied. I mean, the board said that they would address this, so the
Yeah.
TAC is asking them to address it.
I-
It might come out exactly how we all want it, but
I think if, my other board members agree that we want to express that to the proper committee or the board directly, that, don't forget the commitments that were made.
either the ad
in the
hoc
past.
should be to the ad hoc. or
Would it go to the ad hoc or to the board direct or both?
The ad hoc's gonna talk about it
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
And then it's gonna go to the board.
Yeah.
Isn't it for the board to assign to the ad hoc, to direct the ad hoc to what to do?
I think they're assigning the allocation policy. This is not part of it.
Isn't the board determine what the ad hoc works on?
The chair gives it to the ad hoc. I just don't want to, we've never had the board give like official direction on a specific issue in a board meeting, and I don't wanna wait till a board meeting.
What's the name of the ad hoc?
Strategic planning ad hoc.
Strategic planning, so that's what.
Yeah, we want to make sure that those people get at least, consideration, and then that they also get an answer on their percentage of extraction versus recharge, their leave behind. What's that number gonna be?
Even if it's only 50%. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
We put in the high 2000s into the ground in 93, I mean, in 23, with the idea that we might have a chance of getting some of that water.
Right.
And we accept that it may be a 10% leave behind per year or something like that. The longer it goes, the
Decay rate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just the fact that we made the effort to do that and it was, again, implied that there would be some consideration or it would be considered. So,
Yeah, I think time is now.
Next.
Before we switch topics, so what I have noted here that you guys have talked about and a little bit of direction coming out of here is under irrigation efficiency, if you think your efficiency is different, then the burden of proof is gonna be on the grower to make that. It's probably gonna fall under the variance section that we have in here. Well, I don't know if it's gonna be, actual, everything's gonna be actually written out. I think it's just, that's where that would fall. Can both alternative method 1 and 2 be used in a single management account? So April and Greg, we're gonna look into creating a hybrid. We have to work with industry to create the other standard numbers. It looks like, sounds like everybody's pretty comfortable with the Fort Riggs Dairy white paper, but for other industries, we've got to work on that. And then the TAC is recommending that the strategic planning ad hoc committee and the board give consideration to those folks who did Floodmar and recharge from 2023, and what sort of credit they would get and what percentage of leave behind that might be.
I'll piggyback a little bit on that if possible. I agree with the comment about efficiency. I think that that's a mess. I can't think of a better way to do it, but the GSA is not going to hire an engineer to decide what the efficiency is for each and every parcel. So I've been trying to think of a better way to do it, and I can't think of one, but I agree with Blake's comment that that's going to be a bit of a mess. I asked about the geofencing because I think it's going to be very reasonable where a lot of growers fallow a portion of their existing block. And I personally am a little bit cynical about OpenET, but one idea for the board to think of is if you're fallowing a portion of your parcel, could you geofence that off so that way it's not considered part of your AMA? So for example, if you have a 160-acre block and you're farming 80 acres of it, or rather irrigating 80 acres of it, could you geofence the other 80 acres off, provided the GSA agrees that you're not farming it, in the event OpenET would otherwise leach or cannibalize your AMA, if that makes sense?
Yeah, because otherwise people are gonna have them be disc their parcels to get their ET down to 0 in that area, right, Lou?
Yeah, and I'm fearful of even the people that disk their parcels still having an ET allocation just based on fog, or I'm personally a little bit, yes, I mean, the answer is yes, that's correct. But to add on to that, I'm fearful of the OpenET. I'm hopeful it's getting better. I'm hopeful it could be better, but the cynic in me is saying, well, if I'm not farming 100% of my parcel, can I geofence off that other portion? So that way, if you get some foggy days, or what have you, you're not eating into your AMA when you're clearly not irrigating that other ground.
Lou, what's your thoughts on the parcel size versus your fenced off size? How would that affect your bucket that parcel would get? Because if you're still wanting to get all of the
whole part.
bucket for the whole parcel, it might be a little interesting how to implement that. What do you think?
Well, maybe in my head it's simpler than I'm understanding it, but I'm picturing, okay, the cake is baked. You're going to get an AMA based upon your entire parcel size or the GS or the GSI footprint or whatever, GIS footprint of your parcel size. So you'll get an AMA. If you've got a 160 acre parcel, you'll get an AMA based upon that 160 acre parcel. If you fallow a portion of it, regardless of what you fallow, you're still getting that AMA. But my fear is if you can't geofence that off and we're using open ET and you've got foggy days or a certain type of soil that holds the moisture longer, you're getting an ET allocation for the portion that you fallowed, even though you're not farming it. So I would think you could geofence it off just like they would do at the dairies or animal feed operations, provided the GSA has some type of check and balance to make sure you're not playing games with it. And hopefully, and maybe that optionality is just in there, and hopefully OpenET catches this, and it's a non-issue. I think back to the land repurposing initiative that was done by the GSA, and all of those failed. So the board had to go back and because of OpenET, the board had to go back and say, yeah, they didn't reduce the consumption by that much, but that was more of an error in the ET. So we're going to allow them to have the money anyway. I'm just fearful of that happening GSA wide.
Lou, I think it's a great idea to keep on the table and think about that. I think the effective precept conversation may play into some of that consideration because that was part of the challenge with the self-funded land repurposing is the effective precept wasn't enough, and so it had a resulting consumption still remaining. And that caused, and because 2023 was such a wet year, it created that situation.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's a good segue then. I think as long as the board is thinking of the fact that most landowners will be fallowing a portion of their existing field, or rather their existing APN, and hopefully OpenET is good enough where it will capture that. But obviously with the land repurposing, as you'll remind us, it didn't work right.
Right. And I think I'm again always thinking of the administrative challenge because the more administrative steps, the more cost. So if, for instance, you fallow, and it's one thing when you're talking permanent trees, but if you're fallowing this year, so you geofence it off, and then you switch and you grow the other half of that parcel. Now you got to remember to geofence the other one off, or the GSA does, or somebody does, and we suddenly are like we lose track somewhere, and somebody's not up to date, and there's just that. It adds complexity. It definitely is a good idea. Maybe more so when there's a permanence in the remainder of the cropping operation. Maybe that becomes an option, just like with an animal feeding operation. There's pretty much permanence in that footprint.
Yeah, maybe it's something you can only touch every 5 years, or I don't know what. And it's just more for the board's consideration, because I think that's what most landowners are going to do. We're going to fallow,
Right. And it has to do with the getting the trust and the integrity of the data that's being used to try and to manage to these allocations. So totally understand, and I think it's a good idea.
And your comment about the administrative burden is really well taken. That's my whole fear of looking at the efficiency issue, is that I just see that being a mess. But yeah, it's well taken. It's a tough balance.
And I didn't probably explain. Go ahead, Blake. Sorry.
I was going to say a comment on that. Burden. You don't have to keep up with it necessarily real time, like week by week. Also, the staff will have a little bit of time to get through that because you're not like we've already acknowledged, this isn't something that changes week to week or month to month even. This is almost year to year. So,
But let's say you got 50 acres that you're growing sugar beets or sweet potatoes, sorry, not sugar beets, sweet potatoes. And you decide I'm gonna grow this 25 of that 50 this year. So you geofence the other 25 off, and then next year you flip it. Well, we
right.
gotta make sure we remove the geofence off that other one and put it on the other one. And it's that kind of annual step. And so maybe you limit that kind of concept to something that's got a permanent crop because there's less variance occurring in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess what I was thinking though is that it's not a burden that it's like you have to necessarily have an exorbitant more amount of staff to deal with it.
No, it's
You
like the
know.
landowner,
Yeah,
just like the landowner picks out the cap. For the cap
Yeah.
operation, they do it, if they forget, they forget.
yeah, yeah. Just default back to your other, like your other statement in the draft that it's, hey, we default back to this if you don't make it that.
Just like priority of the different types of water, a lot of GSA's a grower needs to go in there and prioritize what water gets used first. If the grower doesn't do it, there's a default.
Yep.
And it's only, that's just it.
Yep.
Just log in. It's all about the capability of the platform.
Yeah, it comes down to capability of the platform. Exactly.
And the platform's got a lot of capability and continuing to expand its capability. So I think it can allow all those things for sure. And that we're trying to just, at the end of the day, we want water levels to rise. So we keep the state out of our backyard. And to do that and try and do that fairly is we got to try and manage it and have everybody, we got to watch everybody. But we don't want Lacey to have black helicopters.
No, you don't.
Operate a fleet of drones. She's flying around. But these are a great suggestion.
I see as a big priority with regard to this alternative sources. It's a big priority is how to document to GSA satisfaction each one of those elements, surface water, recharge, and seepage. We need to know what the GSA wants, and we need to know how to get that information to them because, you know, it's, it could be ongoing and you're only gonna recognize something that has been accepted to the GSA satisfaction. So we need to know what that criteria is as soon as possible.
Bob, we'll have that there has been draft language developed that the ad hoc just put eyes on. So at your next TAC meeting, this should be something to share with you.
Okay.
And it is to that point, it's like, you're gonna need to, submit your water right report or something. If you're pulling from a water right that you send to the state board, you're gonna need to provide your contract, the invoice or whatever you might have with MID, or in your case, what is East Canal Company actually, what are the numbers that are being provided? And, we just need to see that kind of documentation. Recharge and seepage is probably gonna have to be an annual in and out, so we know what you're taking out and what goes in each year, so we track that. Surface water will be a same year use. I did want to mention on the efficiency aspect that I recognize the potential for a lot of complexity. I was thinking that we'd make that fairly simple and you would just say, I'm using this kind of irrigation system, and so therefore we'll apply, an efficiency of X, or maybe it's an irrigation system with a soil type, and there's just 5 or 10 choices, and it's just one of those numbers, and that's all we use. And those are just preset.
That's kind of how we did it in college. Was you had your soil maps were already done by the county, told you your soil type. You can look that up, and that gives you an efficiency. You're told that your surface water irrigation is 50% efficient, and then you apply that with your soil type, and away you go. I think that we could give that as an option, but if we say, hey, if you can prove other issues, that's where it's on your burden. Your burden is to make sure that, you can have data to back up your claim. Because I know there's a lot of uh, growers that have return pumps at the bottom of their fields, but my situation, I don't have those pumps and I work really hard to make my shutoffs so that my efficiency goes up and I don't need those pumps. So I don't want to be penalized because I don't have them. So that'd be something that a grower could do.
Yeah,
Does that make
fair,
sense, Greg?
fair. All right, are you ready to talk about effective precip?
Bring it on.
Adriel is going to share a table, but let me frame what we're, this is kind of developed. There is, as you guys all recognize, and we just made the point there with efficiency, irrigation efficiency, there's a range that you can have on determining effective precip from just one number every year, regardless of where you're at, to tracing storms, depending on what sustainability zone you are, all sorts of things, east to west, north to south, and soil moisture and rooting depths. And it's like you could get really complex where each AMA has, or each even parcel has some value. That's getting really, so there's these extremes. So we were trying to find something that was a reasonable methodology that had simplicity, but also reflected when you had a super wet year like 2023, you got a higher number than when you had maybe a normal year. And then when you had a dry year, you also get a greater percentage of that being effective in a dry year than you do in a wet year, because more of that water is coming in small bits and probably not seeping through a root zone. So we essentially developed 3 different conditions and a rule that ties with that. And this can be discussed and we can play with some numbers, but those 3 conditions, Adriel is going to zoom in so we can see it well there, are what we call a wet, an average, or a dry. And this is going to be on April 1 of each year. You look at the actual October through March 31 value at the Merced Airport rain gauge, which is a tracked and publicly available rain gauge. It's out on the CDEC, California Data Center Exchange Center website. It's accessible. You can see what it's been doing over time. And we're saying that if that October to end of March number is above 12 inches, we're going to consider that a wet year. And in the wet year condition, you're going to get 12 inches plus 50% of whatever the October through March number was above that. So if in that time frame there was another 4 inches, then you'd get 12 plus 50% of that 4. So you get 14 inches of credit. If there's only 1 inch, you're not going to get anything more than the 12 inches essentially. If you're in a average year, and by the way, this 12-inch number is when we looked through the data set, 12 inches is about average for the precip that occurs October through March in Merced. It's a little higher on the, I might get this wrong, a little higher on the east side than the west side, or vice versa. But that average number kind of manages out, and the airport value is really close to a 12-inch average. So we're saying that if you're 9 inches to 12 inches, you get 9 inches plus, again, 50% of that delta that's at 9 inch. So if you're at 11 inches, you're going to get another 1 inch added to that. So you get 10 inches of effective precip when it rained 11 inches. If it rained 9 inches or less, you get 100% of that October through March value. Now, in some cases, there is rain that happens in April and May. Sometimes it's a crazy April, May, it's the April miracle, right? And the old adage of April showers bring May flowers. So sometimes we do get extra water. The board, or the ad hoc, was then discussing that in those circumstances, they could consider giving another chunk of rain of effective precip on a case-by-case basis if there was some really high anomaly event happening in April or May. But otherwise, we're trying to let the grower know that as you're going into this irrigation season here, we're in the 1st of April, this is how much effective precip credit you'll get. That subtracts off your ET number. So if your open ET value said, my parcel used 36 inches, and we had by March 1st, 12 inches of rain, or March 31st, 12 inches of rain, then your consumption is going to be 24 inches, right? 36 minus 12, 24 inches is what's going to be measured and taken out of your bucket. So we were trying to find something that was variable. And when we looked at the historic data, which are in these other columns over here, you can see what it does. So if you scroll to 2023, you would have gotten a credit of 16 inches. So column Q is the effective credit that we would round to. So in a wet year, you would have gotten 16 inches. That equation that was used for land repurposing the first time around when they saw there were some problems did not give you anything near 16 inches. And then EKI made some adjustments, and I believe their adjusted value came out to 15. Possibly. Susan's on. She might be able to clarify if that was what their number was. You can see in the other years what the column K is the October through March value, and you can see what the effective precip is in column Q. So if you want to kind of scan your eyes across those different years, you see this variance happening. 1 year 10 inches, next year 13, 1 year 6, 7, 4. So it does move around, and it's trying to give you 100% credit when you're less than 9 inches, give you at least 9 inches when you have at least 9 inches, and maybe a little bit more, and then at least 12 inches when you have at least 12 plus maybe more. It's really wet. So reaction.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
It seems fair.
I can't even,
I can appreciate that it's not just a set number. I don't know how you're going to explain it to the public, but I like it.
Right. So again, that table with the rules is pretty straightforward. If when we look at the Merced Airport gauge on April 1 and it's above 9 inches, you get 9 plus the potential fraction above 9. If it's above 12, you're going to get 12 plus a number. The GSA will tell you early in April, they'll say, okay, based on the number, you get X, and that'll show up. And now in your, we'll have the groundwater accounting platform will load that value in. And now you can see while you're sitting there in April or May and June, how much precip credit you got as you work through the rest of that irrigation year.
Is there a thought process or potential if someone doesn't like using the Merced Airport rain gauge? There was a type of government weather station that could be put in.
Yeah, the CMS
weather station. Right, since we don't have one, if someone didn't like it and they wanted to put in a CMS weather station, it's incredibly expensive, I know. But what would be the GSA's response? Would they?
No one's gonna do that.
I can't imagine them wanting to.
We've been trying to find.
We would
somebody
love for
who's
someone
willing
to do that.
Right, but if we've thought about that and we have a answer of, well, I don't like your weather station, go, okay, here's the, go put this in, please, we want this. Like, that'd be my, if someone, they don't like it, so have a response already crafted is my thought.
The challenge, I get that point, Blake, but the challenge then becomes, where is that? And then somebody else isn't going to like that value. And now we start seeing, okay, we're going to have your choice. We'll have one, each zone will have its own precip value.
Well, you just say, here, put in a CMS weather station and you can have it. You know, no one, it gets the monkey off our back. Because for them to put in a CMS weather station is a huge lift.
Right now, the monkey is off our back because we're using a weather station that's a registered, certified weather station at Merced Airport.
Okay. It's just not a CMS weather station.
But it has a long.
Right.
Been there for a long time. It's got a long history that they can
Okay.
go back and look up themselves.
And for rain gauge, that's actually probably better. The CMS also has all the solar radiation sensors and other things that they use to calculate ET.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And so it'd be more kind of looking at it from that perspective. Rain, the airport gauge, again, is a long-standing gauge. It's widely used, widely available. I think it makes sense to defer to that.
Right,
And
I'm in the middle of the subbasin too.
it's
Yeah.
exactly, it's in the middle of the subbasin. The other thing to recognize with all of these, as the GSA learns and adapts, there's, this stuff is not written solid in stone. We can come in and say, okay, we need to adjust some of this, but this is an approach that doesn't just say we're going to try and use the river, the San Joaquin River Index value, because that actually doesn't correlate well to the Merced River flows, because it's also including all the rest of the San Joaquin Valley flows. And so it's not necessarily a good indicator. And just the straight rain gauge indicator, when we're looking at it, seems to be the most consistent and useful to have a simplified methodology, but a methodology that at least accommodates for a year like 23 to give you 16 inches of effective precip.
What do we do if the rain gauge at the airport goes down? What's our backup? Gospel?
We're going to send your pickup truck out there and measure how much gets in the bed.
I'm just throwing it out there because we don't, is that rain gauge required to be there in perpetuity?
So there is there's a data set called Prism. It's a national data set that has a gridded location throughout the US of rain determinations. That gridded information is available and we can use that as a default. The do we have some of that on this spreadsheet, Adriel?
Yeah. So
So, yeah, zoom in
be
on
looking
this.
at tiles like this across the basin. And to Greg's point, when we looked at this data going back for those years and averaged, the tile in the foothills, the tile in the city of Merced, and then a tile kind of out in the refuge, those averages were similar and right on with the Merced rating gauge averages.
Cool.
And this was a data set 1993 to 2023 we pulled.
Yeah.
So the backup, Blake, I think to answer your question, is we go to Prism and we pick one of these grids. The thing that the grid potentially has is you have, if you're going to pick it for one particular year, it may have had a storm event that it tracked that was north of that grid or south of that grid, and we may have a challenge there. So as a backup, this could be the place, is the grid at the Merced Airport is the backup using Prism.
I think that makes sense.
I mean, I think one thing to remember is that in a lot of subbasins, they just, every year you get the same, like 6 or 8 or 12. They don't do any of this to try to pinpoint it, so.
Yeah, no, that's why I like it. I do think on average at our place, we get about 10 to 12 inches of rain on average, and if Adriel, if you go back to that other slide you had a second ago, I mean, that's pretty close to what the column Q is showing essentially.
Yeah, column M is the total rain for each year for the entirety of that year, October through September. So that picks up, column M is picking up the April and September rain events that are happening, but often people are already irrigating. And so if they've irrigated and then a rain event falls, what happens is some of that water gets pushed below the root zone. So it's no longer really effective.
Right.
Or, it's replacing some of the irrigation water. So, we think this is a reasonable method. Brad, you're exactly right. There's a bunch of places using one number, and then East Turlock is maxing at 12 inches. That's their cap. And so we're at least allowing opportunities for 14, 16, 13, dependent on those actual conditions of the year.
Yeah, I noticed that and I appreciate that. That makes sense.
A couple questions. Can we get this a file and look at it a little bit closer? I'm just looking at it for the first time, or is this gonna stay here? What we're seeing now.
We should be able to share it. So we just had an ad hoc discussion last week where they did make one tweak. That's why you see average version 2 to create a similar opportunity in the average year as the wet. And so we floated this back to them. We were double checking with them. As soon as they say, yeah, that looks good, I think we can, it'll get shared outward. I'll defer to Lacey on timing of all that. But we would want to make this full data set available and you can see it and think further.
Yeah, I think since we're showing it in the room today and online, we'll just throw it on the website and make it available to everybody.
What is the last column there, percent efficiency? What is that?
That's indicating out of the column Q versus column M. So it's saying out of the total rain for the year, how much was of the effective precip number we gave you? What percentage did you get?
Okay.
So in generally speaking, in a wetter year, you're getting more of it. The anomalies happen, like water year 12, 2012 is a interesting year. It's a lower percentage and a low number, but that's because we got almost 3 inches of rain in April or May. And that's where we noted, and so in the way this would get written up into the policy is that the board would have the opportunity to add another inch or so if that kind of event occurred as an add-on, but that we wouldn't know that as April 1st. So instead of delaying all this determination until like May 1st, we were thinking make the determination in April. If something happens, the board could say, hey, we're giving everybody another inch or 2 inches, depending on what may have happened. And then you'd see that percentage come up in a year like that anomaly year of really heavy rain in April, September compared to October to March.
Hey, Greg.
One other question. You could not find a reliable precip information in the southern part of the basin, in Los Banos and that you couldn't find anything at all down there. I'm just wondering, seems like there's going to be pretty good variation between the northern end of our basin versus the southern end in terms of precip.
East and west.
The Prism data would recognize that. And again, this is where we may move into the future where you have different values for different zones possibly because of those kind of conditions. But I don't want to start out super complicated.
Okay.
Greg, help me understand the buckets again in the past, refresh my memory. How does the effective precip compare to like I think it was a 13-inch bucket rule that we've been given? How is this going to affect that? Is this an addition to?
So well, the way this would work, so if you recognize back on the in section 182 and what you guys have in front of you, sorry, was it there or was it Adriel, help me, where is the effective precip?
1.8.1.34 talks about how it's subtracted, I believe.
Yeah, consumptive use will be subtracted from the total available allocation.
Where are we now?
Page 2
is top.
So here it is, 1822, standard method for calculating consumptive use, 2 at the bottom, page 2 at the bottom.
Okay, gotcha.
Unless the party selects an alternative method or has land use requiring an alternative method, as it's defined below, consumptive use will be in the party's AMA will be calculated as the annual ET as measured by the default open ET minus effective precip. So if open ET says your field used 36 inches per acre, I mean, obviously I'm not going to try and put the volume there, but just assume we had an acre and it consumed 36 based on open ET. Part of open ET's signature is reading precip. So we're going to take 36, we're going to subtract off 12, if that was our effective precip for that year. Your consumption is now 24 inches. So if you scroll up into section 181, where it says that in each year, you're going to have your consumptive use subtracted from your bucket. So you have a bucket, you might have multiple buckets, but you have your 13, you have your sustainable yield, plus your APA, plus possibly alternative sources, and you're going to have 24 inches that's going to get subtracted out of that bucket.
You can
And if
effectively,
it happened in that year to have had surface water, you're going to say, hey, roll my allocation. It continues forward because I got this 5-year bucket again, and I didn't use out of my allocation, my groundwater allocation. I used my surface water this year. That 24 inches gets subtracted out of those buckets that you're asking to be used.
you can essentially call all your buckets together just your allotment, maybe for conversation.
Right. And in the groundwater accounting platform, you'll have your different bucket. You'll have a quantity of sustainable yield native groundwater shown. You'll have your bucket of APA. You'll have your other buckets as those may be credited based on these alternative source determinations. And then each year, at the end of the year, we'll say, what'd you use? We'll subtract it, and you go into the next year.
Hey, Greg, this is Chris Ebner. Can I make a
Oh,
comment?
Chris. Hey, sure.
Hi. So the three sort of categories of wet, dry, and average, and the sort of formulas you've shown here, it seems like there's a bit of a break or a step in that when you go between average and wet. So, and I can point to an example on the table where this kind of has an effect. So if you look at like water year 10 versus water year 19, the October through March rainfall is like 11.83. So that's kind of in that average calculation. And then water year 19, it's just above 12. So it's in the wet year calculation. And so if you look at kind of how that plays out in terms of the effective precip, because there's that sort of break in the function there, you end up with, quite a bit more effective precipitation, even with just a small amount more of additional rain.
Correct. Yeah, we were seeing, those things that's going to happen. And so the challenge, we're looking at whether there was another way to look at this functionality. And without getting overly complicated, part of the benefit of a 5-year rolling bucket is in some years you're going to potentially lose a little bit, and other years you're going to benefit more.
Okay. And then I guess another question was you're showing the rounded effective precipitation. Is that just for, today's chart visual, or is that going to be used in place of the more, decimal digits version?
I think the intent would be to use the rounded value. Again, these are, this is for purposes of doing the allocation calculation. If we start really getting down into double-digit decimals on effective precip, I think we've lost the point.
Yeah. You're cutting it with an axe, not a micrometer. You're measuring with a micrometer, but
Great. I mean, those are perfect questions, and this is the balance we're trying to find. And so open for thoughts on this. So Chris, those are great points. This is that balance again. When we started off, we could have a soil moisture root zone depth on every parcel that's tied to Prism data on each grid, or give everybody 8 inches every year, regardless of whether it was wet or dry. So we're kind of trying to find some spot that gives some variability to track with water year, with actual rainfall, without getting overly complicated right now.
just out of curiosity, what is the average of column Q?
Nine.
So over the last 14 years, you would have gotten 9 inches on average.
But what if you go into a big wet spell or a big dry spell? This allows a lot more. Yeah. I like this. I like it.
There's a whole lot of it.
Yeah, but I think if you go out and just tell everybody they're getting 9 inches, you're gonna have a lot of pictures. Whereas this, you do see there's a year has 16. Greg, what we're kind of mumbling right now is that it's like, well, why wouldn't you just choose 9 years? And I see a bunch of pitchforks coming at us with this, this way. I can appreciate that in column Q, you do have some years where you can point out to people, hey, there's a year where you get 16, there's a year you're getting 14.
Right. Last
think-
year you would have gotten 13, not 9.
Yeah, and I think that people can appreciate that. It's gonna really hurt on your, what's that, 13 or 14, where you only have that, number, the 4. But people are gonna understand that when it's not raining outside. So.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
can-
and that's the
Yeah,
flip side.
Yeah.
When it's super dry, you're not getting rain. It's like we're giving you 100% of it, but there's nothing coming.
Yeah, I can appreciate, and I want to thank you guys for coming up with this, because it seems fair.
I just want to know that, or just note that I think people talk about after the holidays doing a dry January. I'm not sure why the state decided to do it.
Yeah, no kidding.
As Lacey noted, we can share this. We'll put it into a PDF and get it shared, available up there, Bob, and you guys can all look at it further and, bring comments and thoughts. Again, trying to find those the sweet spots in a lot of these policies.
Greg, just for posterity, you already answered this question, but I'll ask it again. With the integration of this data into the last round of the land repurposing program, what would have the results been?
If I recall, and Chris is here so he can answer, I think I had heard it went to 15 inches in 2023. But I'm not sure. Chris, can you elaborate?
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but yeah, it ended up definitely boosting it in the wet years. There was also the use of a monthly running like soil moisture balance. So rainfall that didn't get used as a percentage of ET in a given month. For example, rain that fell in March could stay in the soil storage into subsequent months until it sort of got used up. And so it allowed for that carryover month to month. It wasn't done on an annual basis. It was done month to month. But I'd have to look back to see like what the annual totals amounted to. I don't think it was ever quite as high as 16. But the method was adjusted after year 1 due to that wet condition. And, I'll also mention that it was partially caused by vegetation that was still present on the repurposed lands. There were, tree crops that the participants stopped irrigating, but they were still left standing. And they definitely continued to show a lot of ET, even under non-irrigated conditions. So, that was one of the drivers to, make us adjust the method to account for more sort of stored moisture in the soil that was showing up as ET.
Chris, I don't know that you'll be able to answer this, but if a landowner were to just do a winter crop with this new methodology, would it be clear with open ET that they were not irrigating? So like a winter wheat or even rangeland.
Yeah, it should be, because we would then expect that the ET signature in the warm summer months would, go down to essentially 0. But yeah, I mean, raises a good question about, does ET adequately capture kind of a total lack of consumptive use when you're talking about an unirrigated field with either bare soil or crop residue, or some weeds that sprung up in late spring. It's not a perfect method. There's definitely some plus minus uncertainty in the open ET data sets itself. So I can't say that it wouldn't show any consumptive use at all in the summer, but it would certainly show a distinct type of ET month to month like pattern over the course of the year that would show you that you're looking at a winter crop that's not being continued through the summer growing season.
Lou, if you recall at the beginning of this new section we were writing on monitoring, you can opt in or out of a parcel.
Yeah, I recall that, but I'm reverting back to the idea that a parcel is partially irrigated and
Right.
partially fallowed. I see Adriel made a comment. As long as we can filter out the data using this new methodology allows a filter where, again, during summer months, the ET should be ostensibly zero. And as long as the
ET of applied
filter
water,
it out.
make sure that's clear. There's always ET of applied water.
Sure. But as long as it stands out like a sore thumb, where it's very clear that the landowner did not irrigate, we want to make sure that they're getting credit for that.
Correct.
I have a question. It kind of goes with what Lou was bringing up. I took a parcel last year and didn't irrigate my winter crop on purpose, but then I tried to compare it. When I logged into the platform, all of my farms, fields, ETs, all the data quit in July. I logged in last month in December to try and check it out on a rainy day, and I had no ET data after June or July.
Yeah, you're right, same deal.
Okay, yeah, George here
That's
saying
good.
the same thing.
Blake, we called them and we said to turn everything off for your field.
That's all right. I don't need to deal with it.
No, they've done a couple of updates recently, and I think when I looked at most recently, there's data through December 2024 plotted for a field right now.
Okay.
Is that in the last week or two?
I believe so. But I also heard, and Adriel, I don't know if you got an email on this, but that they've gone back and actually calculated data sets back to 99 now. So you can even request even further back data as part of the APIs. Now, the other part of what you guys are seeing on the public side, where you can go in and just zoom into your field, versus what the groundwater accounting platform sends a request to the data engine and gets the data. Sometimes that data set is different, what you may publicly see versus what is actually available and they're grabbing from that engine. So hopefully, I don't know, Blake, were you looking through the Open ET portal or through your groundwater accounting platform?
The groundwater accounting platform.
Okay, so they may not have run a recent grab of data versus going out to Open ET. So since it's not turned on officially for us yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of on. That might be one of the things, and we can ask them if they haven't done that update for a little bit.
Yeah, because I was just trying to even use 2024 as a dry run for me, essentially trying to be prepared and.
Yeah, it's supposed to be so.
The official dry, trial run year, but just trying to be prepared.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Said I was trying to see where we were at.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them because 2025 is the year for the kind of test run, and so that should all be turned on. It's maybe not tracking your allocation,
right?
But it's tracking. It should all be tracking your EP because that's the purpose of this year.
Right.
Yeah, we'll follow up with them. That's a good point because I just looked at Open ET here really quick, and it's got data all the way through 24 every month.
Yeah, I wasn't too worried about Open ET because I wanted to see what the accounting platform was going to be telling me. And so that brings up kind of an unfortunate situation, whereas we've put out data and gotten the public to try to want to be involved. They're going to log in and see, well, this isn't up to date, this isn't current, and they're going to get a bad taste of it in their mouth.
That's a great
point. They're going to just want to well, fine, forget it. So if we've given out login information and credentials to the public, I think that the platform needs to be updated as if it is live. I mean, we're in 2025 now, so okay.
Yeah,
Time to go live.
It's a great point. We'll follow up with them. We'll send them an email.
Two main topics. Greg, was there anything else for the technical advisory committee that I'm missing?
I don't think so. I think those were the main topics. Well, just maybe a heads up that the alternative sources will be coming, that's being drafted. Some discussions about Corcoran Clay, some of the other things that were in that policy that said by April. Those are being drafted and worked on and run through ad hoc and then and that'll be floating up to conversations within TAC. So expect to see more of this, other pieces of this very soon at your next TAC meeting.
I've got a question for everybody if now's a good time for it. Okay. If with everybody online, I've heard a rumor that the state might be trying to claim percentages of recharge basins for projects that they've paid for through grants or whatever. Has anybody heard anything like that?
That's the Department of Conservation and Water PD.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
That's at a high level debate right now.
okay, so
As far as I know.
there is some credibility to that rumor then.
So
and Greg can probably speak to this as well. The Department of Conservation's multi-benefit land repurposing grant. So we're around 2 recipients. We got
Right.
almost $9 million. And we have an open solicitation right now trying to get projects to be submitted. And so this could put all of that on hold. The Department of Conservation updated their guidelines and they added what they thought was clarifying language to language that was in the legislation creating MLRP that we understood a certain way. And I think according to Ren with Valley Eco, we had an understanding with the Department of Conservation staff the same way. And then these guidelines came out written by the attorneys, and they basically took the ability to recharge in any projects that were funded by MLRP away. And so all of the recipients of these dollars, we're all on the same page saying you do this and
We're
it's
done.
really going to damage the program because nobody's going to be interested in
Right.
investing if they can't get credits for recharge. So MSGSA, we have our own letter we're sending the Department of Conservation during the open comment period. We've signed on to a letter with all of the other grant recipients, basically saying the same thing, that there's a lot of concern. And the staff at Department of Conservation has been surprisingly, Greg, they've been surprisingly willing to chat and talk about this and try to figure this out. Greg, do you have anything new that I'm missing?
I will just add on to that. It is a concern. They did recognize in their guidelines, but not very well, proportionality. So if you got $1 from them on $1 million project, your portion that they would say is the state's benefit of that would be $1 worth of that $1 million project. If you got $1 million for that $1 million project, they were saying the proportionality would be greater. There is room, and we're working on some comments for this also, room to define groundwater differently than surface water used for recharge. So essentially underground storage of surface water would not be required to follow that limitation. Otherwise, what's being discussed, it is kind of consistent with the idea that if there's a leave behind as part of a recharge project, then the GSA can say, we've taken care of that public portion for the good of the basin through the recharge, through the leave behind. And hopefully that is a fallback avenue to address that.
What are
what is the MLRP? What are they saying they're gonna do with that water? Is it just for the good of the basin, we're gonna own it and leave it there, or are they trying to pump it out later?
It's not, it's to go there. So and the complexity comes from the Budget Act language itself, which said any groundwater recharge achieved with this funding shall be subtracted from any calculation by the GSA of groundwater available for extraction by the water users for the duration of the payment. That's what it said in the Budget Act. People were like, oh, okay, yeah, we just won't, it's if we do a recharge, if you convert to a wetland or some pollinator habitat or start growing agave instead of almonds, yeah, no worries. But if you build a recharge pond, well, we want some of that water has to, be a gift of public funds, has to recognize some benefit back to the public.
Okay.
Is where they get worried. And so they added this language on here that says, oh, and what we interpret that to mean is that if there is major construction of a recharge facility, that is considered groundwater supply benefit for purposes of this grant. And so they're trying to add more clarity around the Budget Act language. There is, in some conversations I've had, an opportunity to reframe that and separate groundwater from surface water and say surface water is being stored underground. That's not groundwater being reallocated. And in fact, it's being managed by the GSA according to recharge policies and programs. And therefore is not being reallocated out in any way, shape, or form if a recharge basin is part of the project being constructed.
When do you expect clarity on that?
What's that?
When do you expect clarity?
I am drafting some language right now to float that way, and hopefully they extend it again even, well, what's it extended out into middle of February right now, but we need to get this answered like this within the next week. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get this drafted, floated with a couple people, get it to DOC this week and let them then float back to the DWR attorneys. And if so, then it becomes kind of a non-issue, and the fallback would be, hey, we got to leave behind as part of our recharge. So the GSA is already accounting for it, separate and apart from other groundwater that they've made available. And I think it creates the clarity we need, but time is of the essence. You're absolutely right, Brad.
Sounds like that might work in our favor to have all those extra buckets.
Yeah.
Can I add that it could be kind of just my problem, but maybe other people at the table as well. With respect to the groundwater accounting platform, Stevenson has a lot of small parcels. And with regard to what's in our allocation management account, I have between 20 and 30 parcels that the groundwater accounting platform doesn't even have as being a part of our ranching unit allocation management account. I sent in a thing when Lacey wasn't here, she was on pregnancy leave, but it never got included the last I checked with regard to, all into our allocation management account in the groundwater accounting platform. We need to get it all straightened out now because, 2025 is upon us. And, I don't want to be trying to figure out consumptive use when we don't have all the parcels that are being farmed. So I'd like to get with whoever's managing the allocation, the groundwater accounting platform, and get all my parcels straightened out so they're all there.
Are these, Bob, are these parcels that were not considered irrigated, so they were miscategorized, so you need to recategorize them?
No, some were, but we recently are finalizing a LAFCO process to move about 3,000 acres that was not in the Stevenson Water District into the Stevenson Water District. In that amount of acres, they're just, they didn't get put in. They've been irrigated. They're considered irrigated, classified by the assessor's office. However, among those, there was 140 acres that assessor, because it was an old golf course, they just say, well, it's a golf course, but it's been farmed in trees for 7, 8 years. So it's just been sitting out there, and so we got to get that all straightened out.
Yeah, so the parcels that are miscategorized and that need to go from not irrigated to irrigated, we've got a form, but we're still working through, and we're working with Jeannie on exactly how the back fees for those are going to be handled. And so that's something that the board has to work out with Jeannie. And then once that's done, we can release that form to everybody who needs to do that, switch that categorization. Is that also with I think that also might be with the opt-in. So I've had several people who have said that they're eager to do this. I know they want to get it done. They want to get it done early this year. And we just need to get,
I'm happy to sit down with you and show you the parcels and maps and stuff, but.
The ones that are already irrigated and they just need to be included and somehow weren't, if you don't have, the PIN numbers to those already, we can get those.
A lot of them I do, yeah.
So you just need to add them into your AMA?
Well, I don't know that I can do that. I think it's something that whoever's managing that accounting platform can do that. I don't think I can do that.
Greg, can you add, if you have a PIN, can you put that parcel in your own AMA if you have the PIN to it? I thought.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can, and I'm gonna look to Adriel because he's played with it a little bit more. Sorry to put you on the spot, Adriel.
Yeah, I think I remember consolidating those pins was an option. And I do have a list from you, Bob, that Ashley gave me of parcels that were in question. We're also going through the process. I think there was some where the initial platform captured, a certain polygon, and then the parcel was maybe split or adjusted. That's being updated currently. We're working through that. So hoping to capture all those parcels you provided us that aren't the ones that have the, misclassified piece, at least updated in the platform.
I do think, Bob, that if we can sit down, and I'll defer to Lacey's direction here, get something to sit down either with Adriel or even get somebody from the platform and make sure you see how you can do it, and we'll help you do it. And whether we help you do a couple or all of them, get you to that point where they're all within one account, as would be appropriate within one.
I just want to stay on that, so
Yeah.
We get that taken care of. So I'm willing to however you want to work together to get that done.
Yeah, it's a high priority to get everybody listed. We recently pulled a map that shows there's a lot of pins that have not been registered yet. There's a lot in Merkeen. We're gonna need the Merkeen guys to talk to their growers out there.
Good luck.
Talk to each other.
Greg, I have a question for you to think about, going back into the language we were working on earlier on the non-field production areas. How to classify a single parcel, APN, that is purely dedicated as a reservoir and a groundwater recharge.
Is it designated as ag from the perspective of the assessors?
Designated as ag.
It is. Sorry, you cut out a little bit. It is?
Yeah, currently designated as ag.
Okay, so it's a parcel of some size that's completely a reservoir, a recharge facility.
Correct.
I would think you would indicate that as not irrigated parcel, and it would just be selected that, so that one would never, so we'd never measure a consumption off of it. right? Because if you're doing a recharge, if you put water into that pond, there's going to be a certain amount of credit of what goes in versus what you get credit for with a leave behind, and that's going to accommodate some evaporation that might be happening depending, you know, if you're filling it in January, February, there's not a lot of evap happening, but if you're grabbing surface water in August and putting it out there and you got a bunch of evap, we probably want to consider that. But somehow we have a number, and that shouldn't be representing, it shouldn't be measured as a consumption because that's your recharge project. So the accounting platform would allow you to turn off that parcel to not be measured as part of your consumptive use quantification. So that should be the way to work that parcel, right?
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's difficult though, because I have an example in my mind where I have a recharge pond on a portion of a parcel.
I was doing the same thing.
Yes, I have that same problem. I've got
Yeah.
it's a bunch of, you know, rectangular parcels, but the recharge basin goes over quite a few different parcels.
Yeah, actually, I remember your.
My mind was going to Lou's geofencing solution.
Yeah, me too.
That's kind of, I think that is probably what you do,
Yeah.
especially when it's.
You know, I think these are, it may be a great solution. We got to see how easily it can be implemented by that team. But I think this is exactly why we're looking for 2025 to be kind of that pilot year as we look to stuff like this. And we're like, oh, how do we have to address that? And we can get these things cleaned up before we make it truly
Yeah.
live against the allocation.
I think I helped fill one of yours, Bob, with my runoff.
Okay,
Excellent.
if there's nothing else, your next meeting is on February 25th. I expect it's gonna be a long meeting because you're gonna have the, alternative sources and I think it's just gonna be a long, good conversation. So we'll see you, next month and, at a 349 event.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
It's 1:30.
Yeah.
When I tell you it's 1:30 in a couple of weeks, you go, no, I did two.
We'll go to lunch.
Thanks, everybody.